So, today I'm going to talk to you about how emotional dependency can lead to codependency. So, emotional dependency for a lot of us is primarily our need to get someone else to validate what we're feeling or what we're going through or what we're hurting from. Now, this ultimately, if we're not able to be able to create an independence in some way for our own emotions to be able to validate ourselves, then we're constantly seeking someone else to depend, to be able to validate them from us, validate them for us. After which we start creating a dependency on them, after which our emotional freedom is now a distant memory, and our emotional reaction is tied to how they validate or don't validate us. So we start to become really dependent on them. As this relationship really starts to build and more time starts to go through, we get into things like people pleasing, we get into all other kinds of aspects just so we can ultimately get that emotional validation from that person. And we can get them to consider what we're going through, we can get them to react what we're going through, we can get them to validate us most of the time. So here's how it really happens. Now, when we're kids and when we're really young, if we went through something, so let's say whether it was covert or overt, if we were in a space where we went through something traumatic or we went through a really difficult or challenging time, maybe even we had certain instances occur in our lives where we felt really hurt. Now, if we went to our caregivers expecting them to be able to validate us, because naturally any child would need that, right? They need the love, the care, the tenderness of the caregiver to be able to make them feel safe, to be able to make them feel like, okay, I know you're hurt, but it's okay, it's going to be all right. Now, if we didn't get that soothing, then what happens is we start to feel inside that we're lacking in some way. And we start to feel inside that, oh my God, my wounds are not worthy or hurtful enough for someone to pay attention to me. And there's another big belief that's attached to it. The bigger belief is that I myself am not worthy enough, that someone can actually give me the light of day of their own emotions to be able to regulate me, to be able to just understand what I'm going through, to soothe me, to be able to validate me, etc. So now what happens as we start growing up is one of the things, one of the coping mechanisms, or one of the tendencies really we get into is that because our voice wasn't really heard when we were younger, and by voice now I'm talking about the pain that we went through, we have a tendency to be able to either exaggerate the pain in some way or to be able to victimize ourselves in some way so that we can make sure that someone pays attention to us and validates us. The difficulty with that is that, especially when we come from a place of victimization, we're coming from a place of scarcity. And so the very thing we want, which is somebody else's love, care, attention, and the ability to just recognize us and validate how we're feeling, that starts to go further and further away. And so we start chasing it further away. Let me give you an example, right? So this could sound really complicated. Let me give you an example. Let's say you go through a really difficult time at work. Let's say you are in a relationship, but something really bad or difficult happens at work. Now, when that thing challenging happens, maybe your boss has said something to you that was really challenging. Maybe he was an asshole or she was just like a pain in the ass. Maybe you just had a really hard day. Maybe you even lost your job. Now, what tends to happen in that case where I said when we emotionally depend on other people, the first person we go to immediately after that happens is our partner. So we pick up a phone and we text our partner and we're like, oh my God, I lost my job today. Oh my God, this happened today. Oh my God, I really need you. And so we are now bypassing our own internal regulatory and validatory mechanisms that we have. And we're going straight to the partner. Why? Because that is something that we've hoped and hoped could actually be fulfilled right from our childhood because they didn't really fulfill us. And so, or validate us in those moments. And so we're hoping that we can finally find someone who'll be able to do it for us. But what happens in that situation is most of the cases, the partner will either one, there's a possibility of them saying, well, deal with it, shit happens, so they subconsciously invalidate the pain we're going through, or they're like, listen, you keep doing this where you keep coming to me and you're crying, etc., blah blah blah. Or they attempt to show up but it just doesn't feel genuine, it just kind of feels like not honest and integral, and they're just like, yeah, I feel your pain, but they don't really understand what you mean. In any case, from all of those like examples or all of those outcomes, the end result is that we still feel invalidated and we still feel like our pain and our wound has not been recognized. And the reason for that is that the first person who needs to validate and recognize our own wound is us, ourselves. And so the reason is that the inner child can really, our inner child that lives inside us, which is basically this young version of ourselves that's living inside, that's gone through, conditioning, that's had a really tough, upbringing, or maybe not even a tough upbringing, has just been exposed to various emotional dysregulation, and in this case, has not been validated or loved, that child lives inside of us. And so the only person that that child can actually trust and count on for sure for emotional validation is who? No one on the outside. It's us. Think about it. Because that child already tried to count on someone else. It already tried to count on maybe parents, maybe siblings, maybe the social system when you were a kid, and it didn't work out. And now, as an adult, we're almost repeating the pattern where we're trying to work this on somebody else. And the person we tried most on, the person who reflects these childhood wounds back the most, is a partner. So we're trying it back on them, but it's just not working out. It's leading to conflict. Because the first person and the most important person that we need to go through for recognition is us. So in those moments when we go through any difficult, like, even subtle traumas, or even some kind of like trigger, like I said, at work or anywhere else in your space, we need to be able to recognize for ourselves what it is we're going through first. We need to sit with ourselves, and we need to first acknowledge the pain that we're going through. Because by taking that pain and straight away trying to give it to someone else, like I said, we're not only bypassing ourselves in the process and our own responsibility, we're also invalidating what we think it means. We're also invalidating our own witnessing of the pain. So technically, what we're doing is we're saying that this pain is, I don't have the space, time, or energy to even want to consider it. So I'm going to take it from where it happened and give it to someone else to work with. But like I said, doing that will just perpetually lead us down a rabbit hole of feeling more and more pain, wanting to reach out more and more onto our partner, trying to build bigger and bigger and bigger instances of more and more pain, so that one day we hope that they'll finally be able to come out to us and say like, oh my God, I recognize you. You're going through so much pain. And that will never happen, because ultimately the only person who can really validate us is ourselves. And that is how we start to create not just emotional security, but emotional freedom. That is how we reduce the possibility of codependency, because now we're not being sucked into something with someone else, hoping that they can validate us. And so therefore we're not willing to do anything else in the relationship just so we can get these little breadcrumbs, or we can get this, this little piece of addiction, of which is an emotional validation from them. Instead, we're choosing to say and sit with ourselves. The biggest way, one of the best ways to do it is journaling, to sit and just write your thoughts out and say, today this happened, and this is how I felt. It was really shitty. It was really heavy. I felt really sad, and I felt really alone. And I just want to like bring this out in some way. You don't even have to say that. You can just say, I know what I'm going through, and I know that this is hard. You don't even have to say something like, but it will be okay and things will always work out. Just recognize it. Just recognize it for yourself in that moment. Something else you can do to further that, which is something that I attempt to spend time with myself doing, because I feel that way a lot. I feel like I'm a very sensitive man, and so I feel like I need to bear witness to myself first and foremost. So I find myself sitting quietly at outside in the sun at viewpoints especially, and I just sit and I get very reflective. And I think of my inner child in that same moment. So think about that moment we talked about when, you lost your job, for example. What was your inner child feeling? Your inner child would feel fear, would feel anxiety, would be afraid of like a lack of security, would feel so many things because they've lost something important in their lives. At the same time, your inner child is also feeling like they need love, because that's why they're wanting you to reach out to someone else. So they need love. They need a little bit of attention. They need a little bit of just a connection. And so if you focus on two people, first and foremost, your inner child, you go back to your inner child and you just say, I know what you're feeling right now. And you just soothe them. And you say, I love you. Everything's going to be okay. I know the pain that you felt from this job. I know you may feel like it feels like rejection. But maybe there's something good that might come out of it. Even if not, it's okay. You're hurting. I know you're crying. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. If not anything, that is something beautiful that I can offer, is that I'm here for you right now. And picture yourself hugging and holding your inner child. Picture yourself just being there for you, for your young inner child. And then if you want to picture your present self, you can do the same. Just picture you being there for your inner child. Before you reach out to a partner, before you reach out to anyone else, take a few minutes just for yourself to do that. practice this on a regular. Keep consistent with the same little piece of work. Just practice this bit by bit for yourself. And then just see how differently you start showing up. Two things will happen. One, you will start to feel so much more content with what's happening. Maybe when you find future rejections or things that happen, they may or may not hit you as hard, but either ways, you'll be able to absorb them better for yourself. And two, so you'll start building more security within. And two, which is more important for a relationship, you'll also start reaching out for a dependency on your partner less and less and less. And this will allow your partner to feel a little more safe and a little more secure, not to feel like, oh my God, I'm not capable enough for showing up for them. It'll start to make them feel like, okay, where I can show up and how I'm showing up now is good. And they can start to see you and understand you because you're demanding less of what they're not capable of. You see? So it all starts to like connect a little more. And so instead of the gap being here, where this is how much you're demanding from them, this is how much they're just not capable of, it starts to come closer to this point where you start to become so much more emotionally secure and your relationships start to flourish more with connection. Now, this does not mean that you never need to share something with your partner. And it doesn't mean that there won't be moments when you find it hard and that you can't really hold ground for yourself, but you need to like step in and ask your partner to help a little bit. And that back and forth is beautiful. And that's what makes a really beautiful and powerful relationship. And you need to trust that that will happen. But this cannot happen if it's only this. You see? So you need to allow yourself to be able to find more security in your own witnessing your own pain, holding ground for your own self, acknowledging that like what you're going through and validating yourself a little more. So you get closer to that margin where this can happen so much more. So take some time for yourself whenever you, especially when you go through difficult moments, take some time with yourself first, just you, because if you notice, the pain that you feel is actually just yours. As difficult as that may sound, other people may feel pain and you all may feel pain together, but the pain that you're feeling is yours. So before you can expect anyone else to understand it, you must first recognize and understand it and just feel it a little bit before you can move past and give it to someone else. All right? Love you guys.